How can we send a message to the distant future, where humanity has progressed over 10,000 years from our time? Can we effectively warn those societies about the dangers we face today? And is there anything we can do to ensure that these warnings are decipherable and easily understood? These questions are the primary motives of nuclear semiotics, a field of research focused on deterring future human beings from coming into contact with nuclear waste. This starts with the semioticians who study semiotics, including signs, the concepts they represent, and how their meaning is understood within a cultural interpretation of those symbols. For example, the sign of a red traffic light signals a driver to stop. The red color encapsulates the concept of stopping and becomes widely understood within the context of driving and public safety. Living in an environment where automobile transportation is a part of everyday life, this understanding becomes reflexive and second nature. In a nuclear context, semioticians apply this concept to create warning signs that will last for millennia, to ensure that the message is not lost into the future. While nuclear waste will eventually decay, this process can take many thousands of years. Plutonium-239, one of the main isotopes used in nuclear weapons production, has a half-life of 24,000 years. Uranium-235, used for similar purposes, has a half-life of over 700 million years. Before they can sufficiently decay throughout this period, radioactive materials pose a great threat to natural life. Cancers, genetic mutations, and radiation illnesses can be seen even from low levels of radiation. The persistent nature of radioactive waste, combined with lasting biological effects, puts future generations at risk who would have had no involvement in its production. For these reasons, in the 1970s, the United States government authorized the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, or the WIPP, to begin construction. Located in southern New Mexico, the site is a massive storage facility for nuclear waste. The WIPP aims to keep radioactive waste safely buried deep underground in a salt basin for over 10,000 years. The National Academy of Sciences chose the site specifically for its high concentration of Permian salt. The idea was that after filling the designated caverns with waste material, the local salt deposits would fill up that empty space over time, creating a cocoon of hardened salt. In theory, this process would permanently isolate the hazardous waste from the local environment. Eventually. Aside from the WIPP, Yucca Mountain in Nevada was designated as a larger and even longer-term storage facility for high-level nuclear waste. The plan was that the WIPP would store low-level waste, and Yucca Mountain would store high-level waste. As for the distinction between them, high-level waste is created from the byproducts of nuclear fuel, while low-level waste includes objects that have come into contact with the elements of uranium and plutonium. This includes many things like contaminated tools, gloves, or basically anything used for any kind of nuclear production. The Yucca Mountain site was seen as a bigger brother to the WIPP, having higher standards for the storage process. The project would not be officially approved until 2002, and to this day has suffered many bureaucratic setbacks in its development. Funding for the site ended in 2011 under the Obama administration, and was similarly opposed by Donald Trump. As of 2024, the United States is left with the WIPP as its sole repository for nuclear waste. With the country's nuclear byproducts in one location, the U.S. Department of Energy and Bechtel, an engineering firm, formed the Human Interference Task Force. Their stated goal was to reduce the likelihood of future humans unintentionally intruding on radioactive waste isolation systems. By doing so, they would have used the techniques found in nuclear semiotics to develop signs and systems that could be understood at 4 levels of complexity. The first level, according to the HITF, is something that can be conveyed through an icon or a sign. For example, this symbol was created to contain this message: caution, biohazardous waste buried here. At the next level of complexity, the messages would begin to carry more detailed and technical explanations regarding the specificity of the waste. Radioactive wastes are buried blank meters below the surface within a blank hectare area bounded by blank markers. Further information located blank. The third level would provide a detailed written summary of the site, including the dimensions of the repository, contents of each waste package, and recommended actions to ensure safety. The final level would contain comprehensive knowledge designed to be widely disseminated. A message of this manner could have likely been 500 to 1,500 pages in length, written in multiple languages, and contain information such as mathematical data, figures, charts, and diagrams, as well as the risks of human interference. In the early 1990s, Sandia National Laboratories formed two teams of researchers to expand on the ideas of the Human Interference Task Force. Together, they compiled their findings and theories regarding possible markers for the waste site in a single report. They would attempt to convey this following message non-linguistically or without any spoken or written word. This place is a message and part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We considered ourselves to be a powerful culture. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. The danger is in a particular location. It increases towards a center. The center of danger is here, of a particular size and shape and below us. The danger is still present in your time as it was in ours. The danger is to the body and it can kill. The form of the danger is an emanation of energy. The danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhabited. Taking inspiration from ancient structures like Stonehenge, the pyramids, and the Pantheon, the Sandia researchers sought to incorporate the ideas of semiotics into an iconic structure, conveying this message through symbolism. They decided that such a marker should be durable to stand the test of time, and detectable, highly visible to outsiders, much like other ancient creations. This structure, the task force believed, should withstand weathering from the environment when upkeep might be impossible. They also believed it should be made out of simple materials to deter theft. After all, the idea is that it will be a permanent marker for 10,000 years. For reference, Stonehenge is believed to be about 5,000 years old, around the same age as the pyramids, only half the time, at most, of which a theoretical nuclear warning sign is designed to last. This led Team A at Sandia down the path of intimidating and hostile architecture called menacing earthworks. Some believed in this landscape of thorns, which has become an iconic depiction of the Sandia report in its own right. Many renditions of the site capture the desolation of what such an idea might look like in the far dystopian future. Sandia could not have guaranteed the durability of the landscape of thorns, theorizing that the proposed concrete construction would begin showing cracks and decay over time. While Sandia couldn't guarantee the longevity of this design in particular, they couldn't promise anything about any of their other ideas, as over the course of 10,000 years, nothing is guaranteed. In our time, we just don't see symbols this old, and if we did, they definitely wouldn't have the same intent behind them as they did over 10,000 years ago. Therefore, it was reasonable, they thought, that the current symbols for our understanding of radiation would change drastically on a long enough timeline. Take, for instance, the prevalence of this symbol. You've seen it before, the nuclear trefoil. Why couldn't this be used as the symbol to stand for millennia as a warning sign? Unfortunately, it's all still just a matter of the time scale, according to Sandia. While the symbol has a ubiquitous meaning to us in the current year, semioticians believed it might not be as powerful thousands of years down the road. They also came to the conclusion that the symbol isn't immediately recognized as a dangerous one. Our association, really, relies on the context with its relation to atoms and the periodic table. As Sandia put it, it is indeed an internationally recognized symbol with a 40-year history, but its long-term intelligibility when applied to all cultures over a period of 10,000 years is dubious at best. Another symbol we think of when it comes to hazardous materials is the skull and crossbones. In fact, this symbol was personally suggested to Sandia by astronomer Carl Sagan. His belief that the skull and crossbones is tried and true is a reasonable one. It is the symbol used on the lintels of cannibal dwellings, the flags of pirates, the insignia of SS divisions and motorcycle gangs, the labels of bottles of poisons. Human skeletal anatomy, we can be reasonably sure, will not unrecognizably change in the next few tens of thousands of years. Team B at Sandia agreed, but again concluded that no symbol is certain to stay in use for 10,000 years. As Sagan said in his letter to the team, half-lives of the longest-lived radioisotopes in question constitute a time period longer than recorded human history. No one knows what changes that span of time will bring. The report cites the cultural differences associated with the skull and crossbones, including its medieval origin, that the skull belonged to Adam, the first man, and the cross promised his resurrection. Ultimately, it was seen as too ambiguous. If symbology wouldn't work, Team A believed that depictions of human faces would effectively convey disgust, horror, and terror. Inspired by Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream, this engraving was designed to be carved on any available surface at the whip. Danger. Poisonous radioactive waste buried here. Do not dig or drill here before 12,000 AD. The two faces, one holding a pair of hands up to his face, the other showing an intense disgust, were thought to evoke an emotion of strong uneasiness in whoever might uncover them. Make note of the nuclear trefoil embedded in the sentence, as to associate the sign with the word radioactive, an idea thought to make the symbol's meaning more clear. Thomas Sibiak, a linguist and researcher for the Human Interference Task Force, proposed something he believed would last far longer than any physical monument, a system of beliefs that would be passed down over generations through oral tradition and ritual, led by an atomic priesthood. Alvin Weinberg, a physicist known for his work during the Manhattan Project, described man's relationship to nuclear power as a Faustian bargain, or a deal with the devil. He believed that it offered humanity an inexhaustible source of energy when handled properly, and when handled in the right way, would produce only heat and traces of radioactivity. For Alvin, the ultimate downside remained the burden that improperly handled materials posed to our society, something he stated that we are quite unaccustomed to. Isaac Asimov's novel, Foundation, includes an atomic priesthood as a common element in the series. In the first book, Salvor Hardin of the planet Terminus conspires against a rival kingdom, Anacreon, to retain control of the planet's nuclear power and technology. Joining forces with other planets threatened by Anacreon's creeping influence, Hardin offers scientific and medical assistance to them in return for their support. The scientific advancement of Terminus leaves the less advanced civilizations believing that their control is magic, thus creating the myth of an enlightened priesthood. This religion is never given a formal name, most commonly referred to as the religion of science within the series. Thomas Sibiak's history of studying folklore, mythology, semiotics, and language led him to Bechtel, where he worked with the Human Interference Task Force within their Nuclear Semiotics Initiative. Following an introduction to the concept from sci-fi writers Isaac Asimov and Arsène Darnay, as well as agreeing with the sentiment from Alvin Weinberg, Thomas Sibiak proposed a nuclear priesthood to protect atomic knowledge through ritualistic tradition for over 10,000 years. He believed this would work, as the Roman Catholic Church had contained its central message for a little over 2,000 years. For reference, that's only a fifth of how long the atomic religion is designed to last. While language and symbols become lost to time, Sibiak believed his relay system within the atomic priesthood would solve this problem. Through successive relays or councils every 3 generations, information would be updated and translated in accordance with the changing cultural landscape about every 100 years. However, in the grand scheme of a 10,000-year time span, this too had the potential to slip and lose its core message. Therefore, Sibiak believed that there should be an overarching meta-message concerning nuclear waste sites and their importance as a holy place, which would be discussed through council every 250 years to be maximally efficient. Sebiak noted that the warnings from the relay system could potentially go unheeded by adventurers and tomb raiders, which has been a common problem for the whole project, as we've seen with Sandia's ideas on menacing earthworks. It seems too difficult to stop people from searching these gigantic structures when they don't know about the danger lurking just beneath the surface. To combat this, the Atomic Priesthood would have a set of built-in enforcement mechanisms, such as manufactured folklore and legends to scare people away from the containment zones. According to Sebiak, the religion's elites would ideally be self-selective, consisting of knowledgeable physicists, experts in radiation sicknesses, anthropologists, linguists, psychologists, semioticians, and whatever additional expertise may be called for now and in the future. They would devote their lives to learning the rites and creeds of the Atomic Priesthood, as well as their fields of study. This meant that the priesthood would be given the task of laying a false trail to steer the uninitiated away from the waste sites. The religious leaders would instill a false superstition in their followers through annual oral tradition, treating the hazardous sites as places that would put a great curse on those who pay visit. The Human Interference Task Force consulted with folklore specialists who compared the curses to those of Egyptian burial sites deterring grave robbers searching for hidden treasure. While it may have scared some off, the idea of an ancient curse in the modern age has made the superstition highly ineffective. Only the priesthood itself would be privy to the actual truth behind the entire operation. This single point begs multiple questions regarding the efficacy of the movement. Susan Garfield criticizes Sebiak's reliance on secrecy, manipulation, and deceit, and that the elite priesthood lacks respect for human capabilities. The priesthood is conveyed as a grandiose institution for future cultures and has the capability to spiral out of control, far beyond the purpose of keeping atomic knowledge into the future. No one can predict the influences an atomic religion might have on future societies. The possibilities of schisms, crusades, and wars for an admittedly false trail are reasonable criticisms considering the world-altering vision of a future ruled by an atomic elite. The Atomic Priesthood Project is an ongoing art project by Brian McGovern Wilson. His work explores the aesthetics of the atomic age as if they were religious iconography. Through his art, he has expanded on the priesthood's religiosity by drafting traditions and rituals and creating religious garb for the elite priests. One tradition includes a pilgrimage to the Trinity nuclear test site, the site of the first successful atomic detonation in White Sands, New Mexico. While at the site, Brian obtained samples of trinitite. Formed at the point of the blast, trinitite is a glassy byproduct of the molten sand at the surface. Most similar to the Islamic Hajj, this would be taken by priests at regular intervals. Modeled after J. Robert Oppenheimer, the vestments for 10 millennia would serve as their robes per Wilson's vision. The garments would be made of silver, lead, silk, wool, linen, and nylon, and provide protection from a wide range of environmental toxins. Wilson's idea of the priests is that they remain anonymous, obfuscating their gender, face, and voice through a silver mask. The most ambitious project undertaken by the Atomic Priesthood Project, to quote the plan laid out by Wilson, is the Black Sun Rose. This marker, made from interlocking pieces, covers 4 square miles of the WIP. It is an ultimate vision and potential solution to the problems outlined by the Sandia report. The Black Sun Rose establishes deliberate human design and uses readily available materials, deterring theft and vandalism. The sunlight would function as a heat source upon the barren black concrete, ensuring wildlife would not make habitats out of the structure. Glass paneling would be placed in smaller kiosks surrounding the WIP, offering information about the site. The marker remains a lofty concept, along with the multitude of other menacing earthworks. Aside from constructing physical markers, few believed in the prospect of long-term genetic engineering. In 1984, semioticians Francois Bastide and Paolo Fabri developed their ideas of incorporating nuclear radiation detection into the genes of house cats. Now known as ray cats, these living radiation detectors were a theoretical species of cat that would glow with bioluminescence when near a radioactive site. This would build upon the manufactured folklore proposed by Sebiak, embedding a cultural myth that when the cats glow, to stay away. As it stands today, The WIP is set to close sometime in the next decade, before 2035. The waste will be laid in the tunnels, which will then be filled with concrete and collapsed. For the next 75 years, the surrounding salt basin will permanently encase the radioactive remains. The Yucca Mountain repository, however, remains unfinished, standing at a bureaucratic deadlock. Discussion surrounding the WIP and other sites like it often revolves around the atomic priesthood, menacing earthworks, raycats, etc. The foreboding imagery of a landscape of thorns and a global religion built on a cover-up are as fascinating as they are unattainable in the modern era. The current plan for the WIP is a bit of a mashup of all of the plans from the Sandia report. They plan to install stone pillars around the perimeter of the site, with an informational room sitting in the middle, located directly above the burial site. There, stone slabs will contain detailed information about the location. The officially proposed marker uses the same information from the Sandia report. It even has the screaming and disgusted faces. They even put the nuclear trefoil next to every mention of the word radioactive to develop the hazardous association like they laid out in their report. This marker would be translated to the 6 official languages of the UN, as well as Navajo. Blank space would be left for future languages to be translated to as needed. The warning messages will likely be finalized in the mid-2030s. As a compromise, the current solution for the WIP will likely be successful for the foreseeable future. The warnings are perfectly legible to us at this particular moment, and will be likely updated throughout time, similar to Sebioc's relay system. But the unforeseen future can obviously not be understood clearly. For this reason, many believe that there shouldn't be a monument to the site at all, that the waste should be buried and forgotten, miles deep on an unmarked piece of land in the inhospitable desert. How then would the inhabitants of an Earth 10,000 years in the future even know we existed at all?